Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Glad that you could join us today. From airlines disappearing completely to planes being bombed out of the sky by terrorists to diseases that no one heard of just a few years ago to none of us having anywhere near the money that we either want or need. Depression, substance abuse, domestic abuse, and violence. The list goes on and on and on. Not to say there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a mighty long tunnel, it does seem. Our guest in studio today is Dr. Carole Lieberman, known as America's Psychiatrist. And she's here today to speak with us as a returning guest about our younger generation. Our kids, our young folks are going to be the ones that are, well, taking care of us someday. Uh-huh. And it seems that there are many of them that have some very, very deep issues that hopefully we can address before it's too late. As America's Psychiatrist, Dr. Lieberman's on a mission to help people gain insights into themselves, not only through her books as a published best-selling author. Her books including Bad Boys, Why We Love Them, How to Live With Them, and When to Leave Them, Bad Girls, Why Men Love Them, and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets, and Coping with Terrorism, Dreams Interrupted. And she's also working on a new book, Murder by TV, A Descent into Madness, not only through her books, but through her radio show that can be heard on voiceamerica.com, Dr. Carol's Couch, and through her television appearances that include Oprah and O'Reilly. How are you doing today, Dr. Lieberman?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you for coming back. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. You know, at the beginning, I was talking about some of the things that, just opening a newspaper or turning on the television or going to any of your internet browsers and typing in, crime, terrorism, disease, politics. It's so depressing. Is there anything that can be done to at least lighten it just a bit for us?
Well, I mean, that's what I try to do by helping people to get better insight into how they're feeling about all these things and what they can do about it. You know, I liked what you said at the beginning about how our younger generation is who's going to be taking care of us. Mm-hmm. You know, I think if more people realized that or thought about that more often, they would maybe want to try to fix things a little more quickly. Mm-hmm. For example, the two main things that are hurting our younger generation is the skyrocketing and sky high already divorce rate. Mm-hmm. People don't want to believe, because approximately 50% of the population, or 50% of marriages, at least in America, end in divorce. So many of these people don't want to believe, because they wanted to get divorced, or at least one of the people in the couple did.
Yeah, at least.
They don't want to believe that this could have long-lasting scars on their children. But in fact, it does. I mean, I have treated countless children, countless families. People need to think, if they have children, the bottom line is that if they have children, they need to get into and they're thinking of divorce, mm-hmm. You know, they're having problems, they need to get into couples therapy for at least a year before they go forward with the divorce. They owe that to their kids. And a lot of times these marriages can be saved. I mean, couples therapy really, if you're with a good therapist, really can work. And can open people's eyes, can open up the different resentments and get people to acknowledge them and so on. And it can put the marriages back together. There are only a few instances when a divorce really seems, is necessary unless or until one of the partners gets into their own therapy and corrects the problem. Like, for example, obviously if you have a partner who is being abusive to you, physically abusive to you, or who is cheating on you and with a guy cheating with lots of women and not using protection and, you know, exposing his wife to all kinds of diseases. Situations like that, you know, there at least needs to be a separation and the partner who's, you know, engaged in these behaviors needs to get therapy and change if they want to or if they're able to. But for most, the garden variety kinds of problems that people have in marriages, it really can be helped by marriage counseling. And kids grow up I mean, that's why we're having so much sexting today, for example. It's typically girls whose parents are divorced, and whose fathers aren't paying as much attention to them as they once did because they're not living with them, and perhaps they have a girlfriend. And so these girls want attention from guys. So they're sexting, they're performing oral sex, they're doing all these things to get attention from guys because they're not getting attention from their fathers. Oh,
okay. So once again, we've all heard that. Is it just a situation where it's becoming jaded or desensitized to the fact?
Yes, and the parent, right? You know, we hear about sexting all the time, but parents don't want to make the connection. Oh, well, maybe it had to do with our getting divorced, and I'm not seeing her as much, or showing her how much I love her as much. But that is it all the time. And it also makes, whenever there's a problem, you know, that kind of goes to my first book, Bad Boys. Whenever there's a dysfunctional relationship between the little girl and her daddy, that's what makes her become attracted to bad boys. And for that matter, when parents get divorced, little boys are attracted to bad girls because of issues that they have with their mothers.
So it's all back to Freudian, yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It all starts in childhood, and boys and girls, you know, when they grow up and they start dating, they're afraid of intimacy. They're afraid of getting married. They're afraid of, you know, people don't go on dates anymore because it's too intimate. You know, they go on in groups or they hook up because they're afraid of getting too intimate because they're afraid of getting hurt. They saw their mother and their father get hurt in the divorce, and they don't want that happening to them.
Well, how many of these kids, you know, you're talking about these long-lasting scars, either from the situation that called for the possibility of divorce in the first place or the divorce itself. There are still far-reaching ramifications. How many of these kids are ending up in the mental health system, or if not in the system, are being affected by the system through medications?
Well, that's the second part of this. Kids are falling through the cracks. They're falling through the cracks first in their families. You know, their parents are either getting divorced or they're distracted. They're you know, many families, of course, have to work. The parents each have to work a job. But even when they don't have that, they're just into their own thing, and kids are getting lost and falling between the cracks. And then, for those kids who have access to therapy, who, you know, their teacher or a guidance counselor or somehow they get referred to therapy, our mental health system is failing them as well. Because there's this horrible trend. It's been going on for, you know, over 10 years, and it's just getting worse and worse, where psychiatrists, and I'm so disappointed in my fellow psychiatrists. It's hard to believe that they let this happen, but because insurance companies want to pay as little money as possible, they are only paying psychiatrists enough to do med visits, what's called med visits, which is a 15-20-minute visit where you ask the patient about, you try to determine their symptoms and you pick a medication for them. And then when they come back in a month or 2 months or 3 months, you see if they're having side effects or if they're getting any better. And then typically psychiatrist throws another medication at them because they're not getting better. And they're not getting better because they're not having therapy. Medication is a Band-Aid. Yes, some people do need medication. But if you need medication, you certainly need ongoing weekly psychotherapy. And because so many psychiatrists have been paid so little, I mean, because insurance companies, and of course with Obamacare, because the pay is so little, more and more psychiatrists have decided to just do these med visits rather than to give longer visits, you know, 45 to 50-minute visits to do therapy because they're not being paid for that. So the people who are being paid to do therapy are social workers or nurses or psychologists. I mean, social workers and psychologists.
They're being paid very little to do that.
And yes, that too. And so people, you know, whether it's children or teenagers or adults, nobody's getting therapy. I mean, nobody's getting enough therapy, and nobody's getting or not enough people are getting therapy with their psychiatrist.
So basically it's a pill for every ill.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Now,
and it's not working. Our world is getting crazier. People are getting crazier. And the help that they're getting is getting more non-existent. I refuse to do that. I don't do med visits. I never have. And if somebody wants to come see me, they have to commit to every week coming for psychotherapy. And then if they need medication, certain problems do require medication. If they need it, I certainly prescribe it. But that's along with the therapy.
Now, as we wrap up this segment, you're the author of at least 2 books, Bad Boys, Why We Love Them, How to Live with Them, and When to Leave Them, and Bad Girls, Why Men Love Them, and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets. Now, with those 2 books under your belt as bestsellers, how much in those books teach both boys and girls basically how not to be a bad boy and how not to have to be a good girl who's needing to learn secrets from a bad girl?
Well, the books describe 12 different types of bad boys and then 12 different types of bad girls, and it explains why you would be attracted to each of these different types and what that says about you, first of all, how to recognize these bad boys and bad girls, and what it says about you, and how you can understand how your childhood contributed to pointing you in these wrong directions, and how you can fix that. I'm not trying to turn good girls into bad girls per se, but I'm from the bad girls. I interviewed over 100 guys for this book who have been with, sometimes married to, bad girls. And so that's how I got their secrets. But I'm teaching good girls that they do have to put a little bit of a package, a little bit of wrapping on their package in order to attract and interest guys, but not to become bad and exploit the guys.
And you've got a website as well?
Yes, it's drcarole.com, which is drcarole.com.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard, and it's been a pleasure once again talking with Dr. Carole Lieberman, America's Psychiatrist. She's been here with us as a returning guest to talk with us about how our younger generation is basically falling through the cracks with the help of single-parent homes and a mental health system that basically pushes pills instead of active and ongoing therapy in order to alleviate some of the problems within the family. Her best-selling books being Bad Boys, Why We Love Them, How to Live with Them, and When to Leave Them, and Bad Girls, Why Men Love Them, and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets are bestsellers available at Amazon and all the major literary outlets, including her website as well. It's been great having you here with us again, Dr. Lieberman.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Transcripts and audio of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au and also at hpr.fm, and you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes.